Circle Money Time.
Welcome to another episode of Practice Prosperity. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond. She's going to go over what is the process when you want to get your child evaluated. Because sometimes there's some fear of just not knowing. And knowing the steps not only can help, if you have a child, but if you have somebody in your community, you say, I think that person may need to get assessed. You can actually explain the steps or just share this video with them about what to do next. She's also going to explain how she grew her practice. I think that's going to be a fun story to go through. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So before we get into all those other things, let's start off by introducing yourself, your practice, and the type of clients that you serve.
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, founder of Hammond Psychology and Associates. We are a practice established in 2009, and we're located in the Brandon, Florida, which is near Tampa area, as well as a location in Plant City, Florida. We serve everyone from ages 3 all the way up. I think the oldest person I've ever seen is like 96 years old or something like that. So we see the whole lifespan. My focus is primarily on psychological evaluations. So to assess if a child or teen or adult has ADHD or a learning disability, depression, anxiety, or some other mental health condition. And then we have other therapists in the practice that provide therapy.
Awesome. So let's just go straight into it. What are some of the misunderstandings some parents have when they think about, their child and how it relates to their mental health and doing assessments? Like, where is the disconnect?
Yeah, there's a couple areas of disconnect. First is I've done a lot in these past 17 years at this point, a lot of education of what an evaluation actually is, because there's just this, I think, kind of misunderstanding or this mystery, it feels like, of what it means to get a child evaluated. So there's that piece. There's a lot of fear that I hear, understandably, about what it means if a child has a quote label, like ADHD or a learning disability, and what that could mean in school and what that can mean in their life and, in their family life. So I have a lot of conversations about that as well. And then the third thing I see often, unfortunately, is just difficulty accessing care. That could be due to funds. It could be due to insurance issues. It could be due to not enough providers in the area, especially providers that see kids and teens. So there's unfortunately a lot of different layers to this. But it is really, really important. And I appreciate you having me on, obviously, today to talk about, kind of ways to get around that so that kids and teens and adults can be helped.
Love that. I love that. Now, to be honest, it is a privilege not only to get care, but also to receive continuous care necessary to, cope with the condition. Can you speak on the cost it takes? Because there is a real cost. There's some funding. There's some, people who subsidize those costs, but there is opportunity cost of time. Like, it is a big investment.
Yeah, and it is. It absolutely is. So depending on the type of psychological evaluation, for example, it could run anywhere from a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s. So it is absolutely an investment, like you said. It depends on the type of assessment, as far as what that investment looks like. So some parts of it, sometimes health insurance companies will cover. Some parts they just won't cover, like educational testing, things like that. And then when it comes to therapy, there's also a range too. I've definitely seen a huge range in the cost of therapy that really depends on like geographic location. So where we are like 20 minutes outside of Tampa is not the same cost for therapy as like New York City or Miami or Chicago, right? Like larger cities, LA. So that is really based a lot on location, I would say. But I know, and I get it. I know it's hard sometimes to think about, the cost of healthcare, if you will. But also, I know I'm a little biased saying this, but like the positive part of it is the information that a parent and a family can receive. Like I've seen a lot of people, lots and lots and lots. I've worked with thousands and thousands of people in different capacities over my years, and it's for most people very beneficial to understand what is really going on with themselves or going on with their child so that they can make the necessary changes to be more successful in life, in school, and work, or wherever it is that they're trying to function. So there are huge benefits of it as well, but of course, like you said, sometimes the cost is a barrier.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned is you service people from 3 all the way to adults. I think when
Yeah.
people think of assessments, they think of children.
Yeah.
Uh, what is the risk of delaying an assessment? Receiving that knowledge. Let's start off with why some folks delay, and then the
Yeah.
second part is like, what is the cost of the delay?
Yeah. So what some of my most heartbreaking cases are when, and not at all coming from a place of blaming a parent at all, because I get it. I'm in the field. I know the stigma of mental health, but like when I hear of a child or teenager by that point and they're in like 11th or 12th grade or maybe even trying to start college and like so many things happen to them because they had to suffer for so long, whether that was problems in school that could have been avoided if someone knew they had ADHD or a learning disability or depression or anxiety or whatever it is that they were um, dealing with. So I've seen the kids that unfortunately got suspended, that shouldn't have gotten suspended, that got referrals, that got in trouble with their families, that got in trouble with their peers, like all sorts of things start to happen because in some cases they did not have the information early enough. Like, I am a huge advocate of getting your child assessed early. The earlier, the better. But of course, the research shows a lot of times, just like we talked about earlier before, there's a lot of factors, and generally families wait years. Because when I say, like, hey, when did this start? And it's like, oh, it started in second or third grade, the issue, whatever the issue is. But then I'm seeing that person in ninth or 10th or 11th grade, and so much happened during that time span that some of it could have been prevented. Those are like the heartbreaking cases for me because I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could have seen you when you were, like in elementary school," and so many things start to happen. Or even adults, like I've even tested young adults or, adults that are like, "Man, I struggled so much through my childhood in school, and now I know that I really had a learning disability, or now I know I have ADHD or whatever it is that's going on with them." I'm like, "Man, I wish you got tested earlier," right? So I'm a huge fan. Please, for people listening to this, like if you feel like your child or your teen or whatnot needs to be assessed, like the earlier the better, to kind of find out what is going on with them.
So I think you have parents, ears perked up.
Yeah,
Let's say I'm a young parent and you know, it's tough, right?
yeah,
It's nights, have a lot of things. What are some things I should be noticing? What are some things that I should be thinking about early on in the child's life that says, hey, maybe an assessment could be warranted? Maybe I need to seek a second opinion. Like, what are some of those things that, like I say, you could catch in second grade or even earlier?
yeah, yeah. A lot of times, I feel like if I had to list like top 5 reasons, people come to me, or for the kids, I should say, is they're having trouble in school.
Mm.
And that could look like either, and it could be a combination, but either academically, like they're just not doing well in school, or maybe their academics are fine, but their behavior is an issue. They're having problems following directions. For the little ones, maybe they're getting out of their seat. Maybe they can't stay focused and they're distracted when the teacher's talking, or at home, they are struggling. I've met so many kids are struggling to do their homework. They can't stay focused, or they don't want to do their home. It feels like they don't want to do their homework, or they're taking 4 hours to do homework that should take 20 minutes. Like those sorts of things are very huge red flags. In addition to, there's so many things, but in addition to your child, like some kids act out, meaning they have behavior problems, or some kids, what we call internalize. So they start to say a lot of negative things about themselves. I don't like myself, or I'm not good enough, or they start comparing themselves, like all those sorts of things. And a lot of those things are red flags. I always say, to a lot of parents, like you do not have to be a mental health professional, right? You do need to watch out for red flags and warning signs, but you don't need to be in mental health professional. You don't have to go to Dr. Google and, search all these things and be like, oh my gosh, like, because we know how that how that goes. But instead, you can reach out, even if it's not even a full assessment, just to go in and say, hey, could this, whatever I'm seeing, be a potential issue or not? Like sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. But it's good to like at least get the first step of does my child need an evaluation, a full evaluation?
It it hurts my heart because as a financial planner, I see the cost of being a parent.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to see childcare be $1,000 to $2,000 per month.
Yes,
And,
that's
and
crazy.
and nobody's looking to add that extra cost.
Yeah.
So practically, in your experience, who are the first people who send up the red flag of maybe an assessment may need to be made? Ideally, it would be the parent, but in real life,
Yeah.
who's the person that begins that process?
Yeah, usually it's the teachers. In my experience, usually the teachers sort of tell the parents, "Hey, whatever it is, this child is now acting out," or maybe they were making good grades. Maybe they were an A, B student. All of a sudden, now they're getting C's and D's. All of a sudden, they're having problems fighting with their peers, or whatever is the issue in school. A lot of times, I see kids. I would say the majority a huge percentage of the kids I see have some type of issue going on in school, whether it's the learning side and or sort of that social emotional side. But there are some kids too that they're good in school, like they got good grades, they're doing well, but they're mostly struggling at home. Like that's an issue too. But I would say the majority of people I see, there's something going on where teachers kind of say, "Hey, we need to have that extra meeting, or we have concerns. Um, what can we do, like, to resolve this so your child can be more successful?"
Yeah, I think that's good. So let's say I'm a parent.
Yeah,
I see these red flags. Our teachers come to me, I've taken them to the doctor. Um, what is the process to find a psychologist? Because similar to how you find a financial planner, like
yeah,
nobody teaches you that in school.
yeah.
The directories, there are directories, but which ones? Like, if I want to receive a good psychologist, how should I go about that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for a lot of people, they feel comfortable with their pediatrician, let's say their family doctor. To start there, we also get a lot of referrals in our practice from, surrounding physicians, because parents have concerns about, all the things that they have concerns with, and that might be a first step, right? To reach out to your trusted physician and say, "Hey, here are these things going on. Where can I find a reputable psychologist, or a neuropsychologist to do some testing?" And generally, they have a list of trusted people, right, that they can refer to. So that's one way, just warm referral. The second way is, of course, our good friend Google, right, or ChatGPT nowadays. I feel like, and just be specific in what you're looking for. So making sure to find someone that's specialized in, whatever your question may be. If you're like, I don't know if this child has a behavior issue, or I don't know if they have a learning disability, if they have ADHD, or whatever it is that you're concerned about, you can say, which psychologist specialize in this area testing kids, and then of course the results will come up. And just know too, I think it's important, kind of as an aside, that sometimes what parents and or teachers think is going on with a child is not it. Like it's something else, which is why an evaluation is important. Not every single thing is ADHD. I literally wrote a book on ADHD to literally tell the world not everything's ADHD. There are things, of course, that are ADHD, but a child can have attention issues because of anxiety, because of depression, because of learning issues, because something happened in their family. Like there's other factors involved, but without going through that assessment, you're sometimes we're just guessing what is going on with kids. And another thing I've seen is that a lot of times, many times, I've seen where parents think their child is just being defiant, like, oh, they're just, being a bad child, or they're not listening. But then really when I do the testing and I look at the data, I'm like, actually they're we call it working memory. Their attention and concentration, like they're really struggling with their working memory. Like they really don't remember what you're saying, right? They're not trying to be defiant. They don't remember. So just things like that to really keep in mind.
Okay, so let's go. I go to my, pediatrician. I
Yeah.
go to a professional, and they give me a referral.
Yeah.
And let's say I call your office. For some
Mhm.
reason, that's where it routed me. And what should a parent expect once they pick up the phone and make a call?
Yeah. So there's a couple steps to the actual process. The first is there's an initial session. So it takes about an hour. Um, Basically, it's like an intake session. So a psychologist would go through a lot of background information. So learning a lot about you, your family members, how is your child doing academically, physically, socially, emotionally? Like there's a whole list of sort of standard questions, but getting that data, right, that information about what's going on, what are your concerns, what have you seen in the home setting, school setting, if they play sports or art or dance or whatever it is they're doing, how are they doing basically, right? So parents should, just kind of be prepared to think about what are all the challenges their child is facing and then providing that information obviously. And then after that session, and then the actual testing session is scheduled. So that part, depending on age, takes a couple like hours. It could take hours. If there's three, takes a little less time because there's less tests for a 3-year-old than like a 17-year-old. So there's just different types of tests. But that testing session, generally, there's tests to look at like how is their intellectual ability or IQ, as many people know. How are they doing academically? How are they doing socially, emotionally? There's a lot of different parts to the testing. It feels like a day of school a little bit to the kids. I don't know if it's overly exciting for them, but it feels like school. They get asked a ton of questions. And then after that testing session, generally a couple weeks after that, there's one more session, which we call the feedback session. And that takes about an hour to go over all the results. And then the parents would get a report. And depending on the data in the report, if a child has some condition that the school needs to modify their curriculum or put in different strategies to help them better in the classroom, then it's kind of like, okay, here's the report to take to the school to say, hey, we need to, put certain things into place to help this child because they have ADHD or they have a specific learning disorder or depression or anxiety or whatever it is that's going on with them. So that's a process in a nutshell.
Sure. I think that's good. I think that's people know, okay, well, there's steps, there's a
Yeah.
process, and the
Yeah.
deliverable.
Hmm.
From the human factor, parents are coming to you usually in the time of pretty high stress.
Yeah.
Uh, There's a problem in the school. There's potential of failing a class or
Hmm.
grades. It's tough
Yep.
times in the home, talking back to family members. Like,
Yep.
how do you help the parent finish that process? Because then they also have to disclose a lot about how they're doing in their household, and there's no
Yeah.
such thing as a perfect parent. So,
Yeah.
speak to the emotional side of a parent going through this assessment process when they're in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I found? So again, 17 years later, I've heard a lot of stories. But what I will say, I would say for the majority of parents, by the time the feedback session comes, they're actually extremely relieved and happy to know, like, oh, now I get it. I didn't know. And actually, I've had some parents, it's hard too. Some parents are like crying in my office because they're like, I had no idea that my child was depressed all this time. I thought they were just acting out, or I had no idea that they had ADHD and they really weren't being defiant. They really just could not focus on what I was saying, or whatever it is that the kind of the results show. But the majority of the time, there's just a really sense of relief. Like now I know what's going on. And then, of course, we talk about strategies like how do you help this child, that has, whatever condition that they have, which obviously is important. And the like from the home aspect, because there's things we can do at home. And then, of course, the school can do what they can do as well. But I would say, yeah, that's the number one emotion that I've seen is just a sense of relief. And like, they're like, thank you for letting me know this. Right. Because again, sometimes without these evaluations, there's a lot of guessing happening. We're playing the guessing game. I guess they feel this way. I guess this kid's going through this. And it's like, nope. So it's just better to know what it is that's happening with them, and then the parent can know, "Okay, now I know how to best help my child."
I like that. I like that. So, what are some of the information that a parent can expect from this evaluation? Like, what are some of the things that can be uncovered? It almost seems like you're releasing the gas lid of a
Yeah.
pipe to say, "Oh, okay, aha." I,
Yeah.
what can they receive from this?
Yeah, it's sort of like the way I like to describe it. So, a psychological evaluation is sort of like blood work, obviously without the needles, where there's literally a whole list of possible conditions. So, everything is being tested. So, what I strongly don't agree with ever is if a parent says, "Hey, I think my child might have ADHD." I'm not going to only give one test to see if they have ADHD. We give what's called a comprehensive assessment. So it's like, well, it could be ADHD. We'll test for ADHD, but also you will know, is there any depression? Is there any anxiety? Is there any learning disabilities? What is their IQ level? Are there any social emotional factors? Like there's a whole long list right? To sort of check off, like, yes, this is what's happening, or no, this is not it. Right. And so I might say, hey, you know what? We thought they had ADHD. Actually, it's not ADHD. It's really anxiety, or it's really depression, or it's really that the fact that your family's going through a divorce right now and they're having trouble adjusting, or they lost someone in their family. They're more dealing with that. Like, right. Like it sort of rules out what is happening. So that's a huge part of the discussion in the feedback session to know like what is happening and why, right? And what is really affecting this child? Because there's a lot happening in the world and a lot happening in people's personal lives. But through the data, it's important to see like, is this just something you're adjusting to, or is this like a chronic condition that really needs to be addressed? So that's sort of like what to kind of look at and expect from like the feedback session. And obviously, like I said, taking that report in, which is very important. Everything's always confidential though, in these feedback sessions. So we cannot release anything without parents' permission to anyone. But the parents have a choice when they get that report. They can say, yes, we'll take it to the school or we'll take it to our whomever they're taking it to, or not. Like it's a choice of the parent what to do after that.
So it's a big investment to go through the assessment process.
Yeah.
Uh, And one of the things that's being talked about a lot in mental health space is people almost embodying their assessment. So I have depression, I have anxiety, and they embody it not to cope or not to manage it, but they embody it as a crutch.
Mm,
Because to do the work after the assessment takes
yeah.
another layer of time, investment, money, and thought and care. Um, what is your thoughts on that? Like, there's a lot of big society that say I have ADHD. That's not going to happen. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And so yeah, so there's 2 sides for that, right? Because there's the kids and then the adults. On the kids side, I will say that, I always remind parents sometimes the kids come to the feedback session, so I can tell them directly, which is nice, but sometimes they don't. Um, but I always remind parents to especially for like elementary, middle school kids, you have to almost like draw a big circle and then draw a little circle in that huge circle on a paper and remind them visually, even sometimes that their, depression, anxiety, ADHD, whatever it is, that is like a tiny part of who they are. Like it doesn't have to be all that they are, because to your point, unfortunately, for some kids, teens, adults, it becomes their sole identity. And it's like, yes, you may have ADHD, but you also have all these other amazing things about you. You also have a ton of strengths. I always remind parents that, whatever their strengths were that I see in the report, you have high IQ, you're smart, you were polite, whatever, you're athletic, you have abilities in your extracurricular activities, like whatever it is, like all those other things also have to be talked about so that kids don't hone in on the one part of their evaluation, which represents one aspect of them. But honestly, the same thing for adults. And it's it's just a different, I mean, we our brains are wired differently as adults. So we process things differently, of course, than a kid, but it's literally the same thing as adults, so that it's really important not to hone in on like one aspect of who you are if you have depression or anxiety or whatever it is, versus like you said, working on, and it is a journey, but working on getting into a place where you can give yourself permission to heal, where you can give yourself permission to say, you know what, now that I know this particular situation affected me to the point where I have clinical depression, I'm going to take the next step for healing, whatever that may look like. Because that's a huge decision. Sometimes it's very difficult. I don't want to minimize that. Um, but knowing through your healing journey, right, you can work on the depression, anxiety, or whatever it is that's going on.
Love it. Love that. First of all, thank you for going through that process. I
Yeah.
think people need to know what to expect. I think that's a beautiful thing. So now we're going to transition into your business life because you've
Yeah.
built a great business. Let's first start off by why did you go into business? It's a lot of work, sacrifices that you had to do. Like it's not easy. What made you do such a crazy thing?
I love how you frame it like that because I was very young when I started my business, so I feel like I didn't know what I was getting into. No, I really didn't though. It was funny, gosh, when I think back to 2009, I really felt thrown into the fire, honestly, because, you go to school, get your doctorate degree, and you know how to do your work. Like I knew how to do therapy back then. When I was doing therapy, I knew how to do evaluation. But the business side, no one ever taught me any of that in graduate school. So it was very much like being thrown into the fire, which I learned very quickly though. But the reason why I wanted to start a business though back then was because I did want, I mean, personally, I wanted the flexibility. And I wanted to be able to have the time to do other things in addition to the practice. So whether that's serving in the community, being on boards, I mean, a couple years later I had a child, like spending time with him, like it really afforded me also the flexibility to just be in other spaces as well. Then, a couple years into the practice, I started speaking professionally, traveling to speak. Like, so there was a lot of different moving parts, I guess, that having a practice allowed me to do. So yeah.
In the financial planning world, they did a survey on why people go out on their own, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is just so I can market the way I want,
That's
so I can
good.
write a book without having my employer edit it.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It's not always financial why people go into business for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with all those things that you do on the side,
Yeah.
uh, you know, it harpens that hey, I have to scale it to a point where it provides enough income for me, but
Yeah.
it's not that I'm working so many hours to make that income. So, what advice do you give people who are trying to scale specifically their therapy practice?
Mm. Um, okay, specifically for a therapy practice. What I would say, I hear this a lot because I read a lot of business books, but it's sort of like start with the end in mind. I really, really, really agree with that. Scaling a therapy practice means different things to different people. So it's like, are you scaling it to 10 people? Are you trying to scale it to 100 people? Are you trying to scale it to 20 people? Like, what's the right bigger goal? Because that would definitely depend on like your next steps, if you will. But regardless, I'm a huge fan of being on social media, networking with others, depending on what size the practice is going to be. Digital marketing, of course, is extremely important. We actually, anyways, I recently am in communication with someone in digital marketing to do that as we ourselves sort of ramp up and hire more therapists. Um, and also making sure to have good business coaches. I think that is extremely important because it's really hard, especially in the world of mental health. Vast majority of people I know, anyhow, that went to school for something in the mental health field, we didn't go to business school. We didn't, that wasn't, or at least in my program, like it wasn't something really discussed. It was like, "Hey, here's how to do your job. Okay, bye." So, making sure if you're trying to scale a practice, making sure you're consulting with business coaches that can help you get to the next level, right? Like extremely important. I've consulted actually with a lot of business coaches over the years, for a lot of different reasons, but making sure to have that person on speed dial to go into that process.
If you were talking to a younger Dr. Hammond and you were going to say, "This is how you find a great business coach," what would you tell her?
Ooh. Okay, so first, I would say, and this is something I did personally, so I don't know, I feel like I'm cheating because I know the answer. But you have to know, to find a good business coach, first you have to know where your resources are. I have no shame in saying at the very, very beginning of the practice, I was straight out of school. I was in my 20s. And I was like, I had so many things on the to do list that I needed to be doing and purchasing and all these crazy expenses to start a practice. So I used like Small Business Development Center, for example, which is located everywhere around the country, which is a great resource. But they had free business counseling, right? Because at that time I was like, okay, that's where we're starting, right? And then fast forward, once obviously get into the practice. It's different when you're first starting out versus then obviously make income. And then the more income you have, whatever your resources are, then you start to look for better coaches. And then, whatever point that is, I mean, we have our different trajectories, if you will, but maybe it's 3 years in, let's say, you start to sort of upgrade the coaches. And then maybe it's 5 years in, then you find better coaches, right? That can help you better. I think the other thing to think about, of course, like I said, as you grow your income and have more disposable income, if you will, for business coaches, is to also see the clientele that they're working with. I think that's also important. What are your goals for your business? What income level are you trying to hit? And then those particular coaches, are they working with people that have already hit those goals? Right? Like it doesn't. So yeah, because it wouldn't make sense to sometimes work with people that can't really help you. Depending on, again, where you're scaling your practice to. Are you scaling to 10 people or 100 people? Like those are two different business coaches, I would say. So,
I think that's interesting. I think it transitions to the next question, which is
yeah,
about relationships. So it's really about, okay, who does your business coach work with as far as relationship?
yeah,
But building a business, relationships are important. We just went through how a parent typically finds a psychologist,
yeah.
which is through usually the pediatrician or the teacher. So how do you build relationships, and how do you think about the value of building relationships versus posting online? Like, where is the
Hmm.
ROI from your perspective?
Gosh, I feel like it's a both.
Okay.
I think it's a definitely a both. Gosh, it's so important. Both are so important. So I would strongly recommend someone, maybe they're just starting out or like a couple years in, like you really have to be building both. Definitely building the relationships. Whatever type of practice you're in, people in if you're in a brick and mortar, I would say people around you in your local community need to know who you are, what you do, what you're about. So you have to sort of be out and about, especially in the beginning stages or the scaling stages. But also, I think there's value on the social media side too. I just personally, I'm a huge advocate for public education. So I really feel called to make sure that I'm sharing positive, like inspiration and motivation, but also educational things for people related to mental health because I know there's a massive gap in what people understand and need to know to make their lives better. So I spend a lot of time on social media. But whatever that looks like, maybe someone listening to this does not have a mental health practice, but has another type of practice that maybe you're a dentist or whatever it is you are. There's still information in your field that people need to know, right? So whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook, or whatever platform or platforms you're on, people still need that information. So basically, I'm an advocate for both sides of it. Build the relationships, always build the relationships, and also post on social media.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of balance as well, but
Yeah.
there has to be a balance. So, and when I work with clients, I'm like, for every 3 posts, you need to make one cold call
Yeah.
or one networking event. There has to be somewhat of a
Yeah.
of a yin and yang to kind of balance those things. So let's talk about the relationship aspect. How did you build a strong referral ecosystem? How did you get these doctors to trust you? I don't know if it's compliant or not, but how'd you get these teachers to get to know you as well, or school counselors? Like, what were the actions? What were the steps?
Yeah, some of it honestly, so some of it was intentional and some of it, I won't say nothing's an accident, but it was not planned. So the intentional side, and again, I am talking about 2009 when I first started. Like, so I want to be clear that I know the world is vastly different now. There was no AI back then. There was none of that. I don't even think I was on social media actually in 2009 when I first started the practice. So back then, I did old school like letter mail outs, which actually we still do to this day. Um, old school letter mail. I was just introducing myself. Again, local community. I am not located in New York City. We're not in, big, huge metropolitan area here. We're 20 minutes outside of Tampa, so it's a smaller-ish area. But sending letters out and just introducing myself, introducing my services. It was just me, myself, and I at the beginning of the practice uh, back in 2009. And then a lot of times people would say, or like some offices would say, "Hey, we'd love to hop on a quick call or, learn more about your services." Or I don't know, what insurance did you take or something like that. Like there would be follow-up. Right. And then I also at the time made sure that I was introducing myself to other mental health professionals even because I worked with kids and there's a lot of people that don't work with kids. The majority of people actually don't work with kids. So it would kind of be like, hey, you send me, or they would send me kid referrals that were kids and teens because they weren't going to see them. And then I would send them referrals that were adults because back then I wasn't seeing any adult therapy clients, right? So it was almost like a swap sometimes. So that's another thing too, having a practice and understanding what is your specialty area. Maybe it's law or dentistry or whatever it is, and what is it that you do that the next person doesn't do. And they'd be like, "Sure, we'll definitely send you those referrals because we don't see those people." And then you swap, right? And it's the same thing in our office. We have a list up front of physicians and psychologists and psychiatrists and all sorts of different well, I meant pediatricians and psychiatrists, but all sorts of different specialists that we trust also. And so when people call and they need a psychiatrist, let's say, which we don't prescribe medications in our office, then we'll refer based on the list that we have up front, like a warm referral for people. And then the same. So it does become, like you said, like an ecosystem, but it is a matter of introducing yourself. So that was sort of like the intentional side. And then I think the non-planned side of it was I also like to socialize. I don't think people would describe me as shy. So I like to go to different events. I've always been heavily involved in the community and on boards and like just different things, volunteering and spending time in a lot of different spaces and doing things that generally I enjoy doing. I like community service, right? So my point is I would just I met a lot of people along the way and then they're like, "Oh," when they think of they need a mental health professional, they're like, "Oh, we know, Dr. Hammond's office," right? So that I wouldn't say I was like, "Oh, let me go into this situation to get a referral," but it's just that people start to know you. So again, I think some parts um of course, should be planned and intentional, but then, also making yourself available, providing value in whatever way you can for your community is important too.
I think it's natural that people think, well, if she's capable here, she's probably a
Yeah.
rock star in
Yeah.
her occupation. Now, is there one thing that you do? I don't know. Some people think of a thank you note. Some people, take people out for margaritas. What would you say is your connection thing that you pull out your back pocket? Are you a coffee shop gal? Like
No.
what do you do that you think, oh, that's how I make them love me?
Dang. I've never thought about that. I have done thank you notes though. I am kind of an old school like literally physical thank you note type of girl. So I have done that from time to time. Just sending some of our referral partners but I think honestly, what I think people let me I really do try my best to show up for people and whatever I can to support them also. I don't love one-sided type of relationships. I'm not really trying to drain right a referral partner or whomever community partners. Like I'm always like, okay, how can I help you? And genuinely so though, like not like how can I help you because I'm trying to get something back, but like how can I help you? How can I support? There's a lot of people I've supported that I've received nothing in return from, which is fine. I'm not really sitting there calculating. And there's a lot of times I've helped people in different ways and it flows back. Right. So I think that's kind of always top of mind for me. Like, how can I help? How can I serve? And then it just comes back to you. I don't know if that sounds too weird, but that's 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 kind
So
of
you
it.
approach everything with service. So you meet somebody, you
Yeah.
serve. When you're at a board, you serve. That
Yeah.
hunger for serve
Yeah, it is.
that comes back for you.
Yeah, it does.
I like that. I like that.
It really does.
So one thing that you transitioned from, solopreneur, now you have staff and team
Yeah.
that help you out. What is that transition like? Because now when you go to doctor offices, you're not only promoting yourself, you're
Yeah.
promoting the team. When you
Yeah.
go to these networking events, you're not only representing your specialty, but you may be representing other people's specialty. Like, what is that brand building versus, let's say, personal individual building?
Yeah, that's a great question too. It is, I will say, just being very honest, it is a mindset shift to do that. Um, it really, really is. Going from solopreneur to then saying, okay, now we have, receptionists on staff. Now we have our, kind of back office like billing team. Now there's other therapists. Like it it is a different process for sure. And it's making sure that you're, obviously recognizing everyone, your team, extremely important to do that. But also, I mean, the practice has changed so much over time, but also, if there's different events or different things going on in the community, making sure they're a part of it and trying your best to make it, feel like a solid team. Because not only does that help, your office, but the people that you serve and whatever way you're serving people, um, they're also going to feel that as well. But it really does it takes an intentional mindset to say, okay, now this is not, I mean, it's not that there isn't any personal branding. There's always personal branding, no matter if you have a team of 1, 10, 100. But in addition to the personal branding, now also you have to think about the team approach. If that makes sense.
Let me see if I'm reading through the tea leaves here. It sounds like, yes, I'm going to do my thing, get out there.
Yeah.
But slightly there's an expectation or almost a setup for the team to help out in that endeavor. And you put them in situations to succeed. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think it's really important too to um yeah, exactly right. To make sure that like now everything has become not everything, but a huge part of the office now with even like the new therapist is like make sure, of course, people are on the website, making sure they have their visibility too, like introducing the team more to the community, like, but it just takes like I said, like more of a intentional or being active in that mindset to say, okay, this is a shift because this is in addition to because I'm still speaking and writing books and doing all those other things that I love. And it does build personal brand also. But in addition to that, there's a team too, if that makes sense.
So you do your personal branding work, speaking,
Yeah.
you run a practice, you service clients. How do you keep the energy high to service kids? Because as you had mentioned earlier, a lot of therapists
Yeah.
usually, I won't say graduate, they move away from children or they kind of grow up with the kids they've served.
Yeah.
Um, what keeps you in the game?
You know what? Honestly, since I was a child, I have a genuine love for kids, even when I was a child myself. Actually, I always say I was like, I have to work with kids. When I was a kid, I really genuinely love it. Like even today, I had a 6-year-old in my office who was so hilarious. The cutest little thing, so hilarious. But I don't know, like I've always felt like, and even I remember starting the practice, I felt like starting the earlier the better with a child. It's almost like a gift because there's so many things that could there's so many things we can prevent. Like, there's just so much heartache, pain, repeating grades, family conflict. Like there's a lot that can be prevented when you work with kids. I mean, I obviously do the evaluation, but even with on the therapy side too. Um, and then, you're obviously they grew up into adults, but if we can work on preventing a lot of things that would strongly negatively affect their adulthood, that's a gift to me. Like that's a gift. So yeah, so I've always loved working with kids. Even in just some of the different work I've done in the community, a lot of times it's like kids and teens, like that's just my love. Like I don't think I'll ever get to the yeah, I'm pretty sure this is lifelong. This is lifelong love. Like I don't see me, I'll probably be like 90 years old still working with the youth. I don't know if they want to work with me at 90, but I mean, I'm just like, yeah, that's my kind of my life mission to make sure in some way, shape, or form that I'm impacting the youth. So
Now, this may not be mental health appropriate, but my mom always said, "Grown people don't change." And and that's probably what you're alluding to is like, no,
It's
I need
harder.
to make the difference versus maybe when they're older, it's like so much to unpack. It could take decades.
It's harder.
Are you preventing that decades of pain to
Yeah.
begin? I think that's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. That's my hope. That's
I
my
think
hope.
I, hopefully you are 80, 90-year old still chasing around that 6-year-old.
I don't know if I'll be chasing them, but
Yeah, I have an electric walker thing.
I am not gonna be don't wish that on me.
One a month, you can do it. Let's talk about the financial side. So part
Yeah.
of being a business owner is reinvesting back.
Yeah.
Like, there's a profit, some you take for yourself, there's some that's left in the business. Now I have to put money back into the business for it to grow and for me to enjoy the business more. How do
Yeah.
you think about reinvesting back into the business?
Yeah. I mean, huge advocate for that. Um, and again, it is about being aware as a business owner what stage of the business you are in. So year one, it's really hard to reinvest back sometimes because you're just starting out. I still remember year one, even though it was a long time ago, and I was like, ugh, this is a lot. Like it's overwhelming. It was a lot. I didn't have any business sense. I felt like at that time, like trying to learn all these things. But obviously, as you start to gain more income, it is extremely important to be reinvesting back in the business, into marketing, into learning skills yourself that maybe you don't know, into hiring, those sort of things. And again, depending on the goals, depends on how big your team is and all those sorts of things. But absolutely positively reinvesting back in the business, huge fan. In the right places, investing in the right places.
What is the one thing that you felt like that was a good bang for my buck? I would do that over again in a heartbeat. What was that like one investment? I was like, whoo, I did that.
Dang, I have so many.
Sounds like I robbed preyed on that one.
I have so many. I mean, uh, I have so many. I think that I guess it would be 2 sides of it. So it's very split for me. One is always I believe also, especially for founders and, obviously business owners watching this, you have to invest back in yourself, whatever that looks like for you. For me, for my interest, it was speaking, it was writing books, it was, traveling to different places and having the, kind of the speaking side of the business, that sort of thing. So that was a really great investment to learn how to be a better speaker and to, I mean, to invest in people that were helping with me with that side of the business. And then I think now, as we're working on expanding, a good investment is to hire more people, which is an investment. To hire more people, to hire people with skills that I just don't have. Um, but making sure we're like developing the infrastructure we need to expand and have more people. Because that's a cost to obviously to change your infrastructure. You wouldn't build, I always say, like, you can't, a 1,200 square feet house and a 5,000 square feet house is not the same foundation. Like, it just can't work. So you have to build a different foundation. You have to have different infrastructure when you're working on scaling. So you have to invest back into, those areas. So that I would say is a good investment along with personal branding.
What is the biggest lesson learned from hiring people?
um, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. It's so many years of things. I think you need to understand. Hmm. They, I would say, because depending what type of business you're in, you need to understand when you hire who best fits your team, like the team culture, right? Because someone can have amazing skills, but they do not fit into your office, practice, the culture of the team, right? And yeah, so I would say it's really important to make sure that they fit into whatever the team culture looks like. Hopefully it's very positive, right? So having, let's say, a extremely negative person, that's not That's not going to help, even though their skills might be amazing, but they just do not fit into that. That's extremely important. And also with hiring, just making sure to hire people that also complement you, right? Like complement your skills, I mean, and in different areas, because we cannot know everything as business owners. We can't. We have our specialty areas, but we can't know everything, which is important to build a team, of course.
I think that's big. I had a mentor. He told me, you know, your first couple hires, the number one thing is if you like them, because you're going to spend so much time with
That
them.
too. Yeah.
You can almost teach any skill set per se. Of
Correct.
course, you would level rock star, but if you
Yeah.
don't like them, your life is tough.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
So you're doing all the business things. Hopefully, we're receiving some economic benefit from it.
Mhm.
Um, how do you think about paying yourself? So some people do like a percentage of revenue. Some folks do a profit first model. There's so many different ways. How
Yeah.
practically do you pay yourself?
I think it's very important, of course, for business owners to pay themselves, but I would say the pay um, can vary over time depending on what season of the business you're in. So again, if you're just starting out, the pay might be lower, understandably, because you're just building up. If you get to the point where you're like, okay, now I want to scale, right? Now I want to change my infrastructure. Now I have to hire more people. Like those are costs. So you might, depending on how big your business is, say, okay, maybe I'll take a little bit less right now because I'm reinvesting more of it. But later on down the line on the profit side, then you go back and you'll actually obviously be making more, right? So it's like, what season of business are you in? Are you in the growth track right now, or are you in the sort of maintenance track, or are you starting out? Like, are you about to retire? Right? Like that, all of that sort of matters when we think about like how do you pay yourself? Always pay yourself, but the levels that you pay yourself can sort of differ.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been in a situation where I hear a lot like my payroll is more than what I pay myself.
Oh
And
yes, yeah, I heard that.
that's a tough place to be. But you have to make that short term sacrifice to do those scaling. Um,
Yeah.
one of the benefits of being a founder, being the owner of a business, is that you can run it the way you want to,
Mhm.
and you can instill the values that you have into your business. How does your faith, how does your spiritual ideology affect how you practice?
Very strongly. Um, it affects very strongly how I practice because I like to think that God is my business partner. And maybe silent business partner, I don't know. Because at this point in my career, it's really a spiritual mission for me, honestly, of like, how can I serve? How can I serve more people? Feel very called to serve a lot more people. And like, how do I be obedient to that? How do I follow that assignment? And of course, that trickles into business, opening up the doors, all right, to more people, hiring more people. But it's like very top of mind for me to make sure like that we're serving people, making sure people are okay. Um, Obviously in the mental health space and other spaces too, making sure there's positive education out there, making sure people are learning what they're learning, trying our best to uplift people, inspire people. Like there's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of hurting people. So yeah, I would say that's an extremely huge part of the development, I would say, of myself as a business owner. And it's definitely, my faith has definitely grown stronger. I've always had strong faith, but I mean, I would say from 2009 to today, it's like um increased quite a bit, honestly, probably because just some of the ups and downs. COVID didn't help. There was a lot happening during that time. We had to temporarily close down the practice at the time. I lost a mentor that year. Like it was a lot, a lot to deal with. It, took some years to sort of recover from that. Um, but throughout, it's always been like, okay, God, like, how do I serve more people? Very top of mind. Lots of doing my best to be aligned to be in that space to help people.
I think since I went out on my own, the frequency of prayers, the intensity of those prayers, they go up significantly.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
they do.
and yeah, we'll leave it at that. Um, as because we talk about finances, like as an entrepreneur, what is one of the most expensive lessons that you've had to learn? Like, what
You
what what
know,
really took the cake?
expensive lessons. I felt I'll go back to even COVID-19. Like, I never learned that a global pandemic, like, it's just like I felt like you try your best, I think, as a business to be prepared for a lot of different things. Um, Definitely was not prepared for a global pandemic at all. And back then, I felt like we had, I don't know, like probably 7 different revenue streams coming into the practice, which all of them were affected because it's always like you hear like have multiple revenue streams, you're fine. No, not when there's a global pandemic. Like everything, I'm like everything shut down. All my speaking engagements shut down. Travel shut down. We had to physically close down our office. Like it was just madness. And though, so that was a very expensive lesson of thinking you're prepared. It just changed me, not hopefully knock on wood that we don't have another global pandemic, but also it really just changed my thinking of like, what are we really prepared for as business owners? Because it was a very expensive lesson. Um, and how do we make sure to like just be in a better, yeah, to be in a better place to not have to deal with that expensive lesson that definitely happened from 2020, 2021 around COVID time. So that was it was a very hard time on the business side and also personally. So yeah, I would say just making sure to be prepared as much as possible. I mean, things happen, life happens, but just keeping that in mind.
What, and this is hindsight's 2020. What
Yeah.
do you wish you would have had in place in 2020 that would have made it's going to be painful, it's going to hurt. But what do you wish you would have had in place that would have made it more manageable?
Um, So yeah, hindsight's 2020. If I knew
Yeah.
there was going to be a global pandemic, if we, which we were not at the time, if we were better set up for like telehealth, we would not have had such a hard hit. Like everything for us was in the brick and mortar, everything. So it was just like complete, like what? We weren't at that time. We weren't positioned to just like, oh, we'll just do telehealth. So like it just we weren't set up that way. And so yeah, I would say if I, of course, had
Yeah.
an inkling that something like that would have happened, I would have thought more about telehealth side. I would have thought more about like digital presence more than only the brick and mortar, um, which obviously was drastically impacted, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there wasn't any policies or procedures for telehealth, and assessments are extremely hard, I
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah, those yeah, yeah, yeah.
This could do some therapy. Now, what's next for you? So you have
Mm.
clinicians under you, you have
Yeah.
a personal brand, you're out there on the speaking market. Like, what does the next 5 years look like for you?
Ooh, next 5 years. So I would definitely say that, we're continuing to expand, the practice and bringing in more therapists, more psychologists, to I mean, again, make sure that we're serving more and more people. As far as myself personally, I think that it probably looks like being in my office a part of the time, but also doing what I love, also, which is speaking to like more groups, more corporations, more um, sports agencies, and on burnout prevention, which is what I talk about. So I think it really looks like a blend. In the next 5 years, I plan to write another book, hopefully a New York Times bestseller this time. So there's a lot of projects. Like there's of course the practice, making sure we're serving the community, and then just also different projects along with that in the realm of helping people in the world of mental health with their mental health needs.
So this is a show called Practice Prosperity. Practice
Yeah.
Prosperity means different things to different people. What does a prosperous business look like to you?
Mm, great question. I think it's I think it's sort of multifaceted because I think a prosperous business, y- when we think of prosperity, for many of us, of course, we think funds, which is important, and in income, which is important if you have a business. So financially prosperous, I think, is important, but I also think it's very important to be happy on some level. No, every single thing is not going to be exciting. Having a business, spoiler alert, it's not. There's some very frustrating times, ups and downs, things you have to work on, but working on your resilience, working on having joy in some parts of what you're doing, I think is extremely important. Being prosperous in your, you know, whatever spiritual abilities or your spirituality may look like for you, being prosperous in physically taking care of yourself, which is hard to do sometimes as a business owner, but that's important. Emotionally, mentally, like I really think it's holistic. I guess the word I'm trying to say, like it's a holistic thing to really think about, okay, I have a prosperous business. I'm a business owner and I'm thriving myself, and the business is thriving, and my team is thriving, and the community is thriving. Like that to me is a true prosperous business.
Love it. I love it because I think folks think of one archetype of the business
Yeah.
owner, which is working 14 hours, always in the office, never going home. But that's not always reality. And I think if you take a step
Yeah.
back at how business owners actually operate, well, the goal should be to create a life that you love.
Yeah.
That includes a business, that includes a personal life, that includes a faith life, that includes a community involvement, engagement life. And
Yeah.
that does not always equal 14 hours in the office.
Yeah. And there's seasons. I mean, at the
Yes.
beginning, long days and certain parts, like there's long days. But again, like you said, hopefully it's not
Yes.
the whole entire time. So, yeah.
All right. So if somebody's listening to say, hey, I'm in the Tampa area, or I'm able to reach out to you. How can they reach out to you for assessments? I think you also do speaking. So speak on a little bit more about what you speak on and association organizations speak on. Like, how can they really connect with you?
Yeah. So the best way to connect with me is typically social media. Dr. At Dr. Nekeshia Hammond on IG or LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on YouTube. So all the social media platforms. And we are, like I said, in the Tampa Bay area, Hammond Psychology and Associates. Um, the other part, as far as speaking, so my website is drnekeshiahammond.com, is where people go if they need a speaker. But a lot of times I speak to different corporations and organizations about burnout prevention, which is something I feel very strongly about. I share my personal journey also of how I used to live a burnt out life, and now it's just not something I really want to go back to because I had to put in practices though to make sure I have the mental resilience, have the self care. So that's a lot of what I talked about to a lot of different organizations and corporations, as I mentioned. But drnekeshiahammond.com is a website for that.
And all her links will be in the description below. So thank you very much, Dr. Nekeshia
Yeah.
Hammond. I love the conversation. You answered a lot of things that I personally have been curious about. And also, your business journey is amazing. So thank you for being on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Take care.